Welcome to the PR Perspective, where we bring you insightful conversations with association executives, industry experts, and consultants to educate, inspire, and entertain people in the not-for-profit sector. I'm Peta Riles, founder of PR Association Services and Consulting, and I created this podcast to share strategies, stories, and expertise that can help associations thrive. Join me as we explore the unique challenges and opportunities of the not-for-profit world, one episode at a time. I'm speaking with Tal Evans. Tal is the CEO of Majestic Computer Technology and a seasoned leader with over 30 years of experience helping organizations leverage digital innovation across IT services, automation, and cybersecurity. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Peter. Lovely to be here.
Could you give us an overview of Majestic's core services? How do these services come together to create a full IT solution for your clients?
We're classified as an SME managed services provider, although we don't use that term, but it's commonly understood out there amongst our client base and amongst a prospective client base. So we use that as a mechanism for explaining it, but we are one with a twist. So, Peter, we lead with advisory, which means that when we engage with our clients, and even before we start engaging with our clients, we start off by conducting a 360-degree review of what's going on inside their organization. We believe it's imperative to understand how people are interacting inside the organization, inside an association, a not-for-profit, what have you. And that then leads the lens through which we look at what it is that we aim to deliver through our consulting effort and ongoing engagement. So we assess, we design, we build, we deliver, we execute.
Yep.
We then manage on an ongoing basis everything to do with technology inside an organization. We don't stop at the infrastructure. Our services are far broader than that, so we look at the technology stack from a software perspective as well, whether the organization is using CRM, Salesforce, whatever, we get involved in it as well. So just like an internal IT team, we take ownership. We may not deliver it all ourselves. We may look to third-party vendors to fulfill gaps or where someone else would do the job better than we would. But we act as that internal stakeholder manager to ensure that things are delivered.
Amazing. And what, for the lay people out there, what does SME stand for in the acronym?
Small and medium enterprise, small and medium business. Yeah, not subject matter expert. I know that can take on a couple of different meanings. But we don't just work with the executive team as an embedded technology arm. We work with boards to assess and understand issues around governance and risk.
So, building on that, the boards are incredibly important because they're the ones that sign off on who works for the association, who doesn't. The executives can push as much as they like, but if it's a new project, it does usually have to get the board approval. So having expertise with talking to and working with boards is a bit of a fine art.
Look, it is, Peter, organisations have boards that dig into operational matters and make operational decisions. Other boards don't. They stay away from it. They deal with governance.
Which is a healthy board usually.
Generally.
Yes,
yep.
Well, it's just good governance really. So one would think they would.
But in all cases, there's always going to be disparity between the understanding and less likelihood that the board will have a seasoned technology professional.
I don't actually think I've seen one on a board, to be honest.
There certainly are some. I've been on a number.
I can imagine they're out there, definitely. Yeah. But I guess they are probably far and few between. Though it would make sense, particularly in the way that things are guiding with today's climate and AI, it would make a lot of sense to have someone with that strategic and industry knowledge helping an association on a board or any organisation really. So, fantastic. How does Majestic approach cybersecurity as a part of its overall service offerings? And what do you see as a unique value Majestic brings to the area?
Peter, nowadays, anything to do with technology, whether in a conventional business services context or it's technology in a context of IoT, industrial devices and equipment that measures all sorts of things. It doesn't seem like a computer, but it actually is. In all of those instances, there's an opportunity for the bad people to get in. So It's therefore incumbent upon us as a technology professional and advisor to ensure that we think security first in everything we do for our clients. Whether it's storing documents, data loss prevention, document classification, whether it's in the way that we design and develop networks and protect the network perimeters, and certainly in more recent years with more and more people working remotely or in a hybrid mode, it's not enough to just protect the perimeter of a network in an office environment, but you actually need to extend it out to everyone's homes.
That's a good point.
And everyone's
actually.
mobile
There's
devices.
so much more and more hybrid activity going on.
That's right. Most importantly, education around the human element.
Is it human error that allows cybersecurity in?
I would say so. There's certainly a great element of what in our industry is referred to as brute force attacks. So it runs through sequences until it finds a match. That, with the power of computing increasing exponentially over many years and continuing to grow nowadays, the amount of time it takes to break a password reduces all the time.
Yep. And is it days, is it hours, is it weeks, or does it depend on the strength of security?
It depends on the strength of the security. I think what's really important to understand, Peter, is that anything a human can build, another human can break down.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long it takes is a factor of how many layers and how well designed the security is, but nothing is 100% safe. Understanding that as a fundamental construct of the way in which we operate, what's equally as important is making sure that we've got not just mitigation strategies, but also mechanisms that will help us deal with the problem should it occur. And nowadays it's more than just should it or if, but it's a question of when.
Yeah.
We set policies and help them write policies for their own organizations.
Which would also help with their insurance premiums
Sure,
as well.
of course. Yeah, without a doubt.
That's fascinating. So I guess what I'm hearing as a layperson is that nothing is absolutely impenetrable, but if there's good security and good structure and safe, what you do is you're buying yourself time to shut them down faster. There's a warning bell and you get to kick them out.
So, I mean, having an active security operations center, monitoring things, combining it with AI-based technology that looks for changes or unusual behaviors across the network or on people's devices. I tend to describe it, and certainly my team do similar things, but maybe with other examples, to the way in which in a conventional bank branch, if someone comes in and points a gun at the teller has a button under the bench that they can press and all the shutters come down immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that concept. So how quickly can the shutters come down? The challenge, of course, is that in most instances, the statistics are very alarming in that regard. The bad people or the people that penetrate into people's network to look to gain something out of it are typically inside that environment or inside the organization's systems for, depending on whose figures you look at, but generally the numbers revolve around the sort of 9 months before they're discovered.
Really? That is alarming. That is very alarming.
The challenge with threat actors or these bad people that come in to networks and sit there and hover is that over time they pick up cues of how it is that individual people, stakeholders within a business or an organization communicate. We teach our clients always be vigilant, always be checking, even when something looks right. If there's a potential harm, check it. It's not hard to pick up the phone and say, did you send me that email?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's alarming.
We're talking about
You don't think that they're
$500,000.
in the system for that long. It's really
They
an
are.
instant get in and get out, take your
It's
money.
because once these bad actors were less sophisticated, it was about getting in and getting out, just much in the same way as you do in robbing a house or a car.
Yeah.
Right? Most people are savvy enough now that they've gotten onto that. So these bad actors need to spend time undetected inside the network to collect information.
Wow.
Social engineering is one of the most powerful ways that organizations get infiltrated and ultimately damage is caused.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not what my perception was of it. I was under the guise of they're in, out, gone, but they lay waiting.
The other thing to consider is there's just as much opportunity for threat from outside. What we referred to as zero trust is incredibly important. Now, that does create some friction, because what it means invariably is that we're applying additional layers of protection inside a business on users inside the organization. They are subject to more scrutiny than they would like. But by applying those kind of principles, those zero trust principles, and simply starting off from the assumption that we can't trust anyone, whether they're inside or outside of our systems, a lot more barriers to entry and
I guess
limits
if
the potential.
it's broad across the entire organisation, then it can't be seen so much as discriminatory or untrustworthy, more just a security protocol instead.
Yeah, it is, but that doesn't mean that people are necessarily going to like it. By applying that to them, we move away from that.
Definitely. So, with many organisations relying on digital solutions, what role does IT advisory play in helping companies make smart and secure technology decisions?
Oh, wow. We can probably spend an hour talking just about that. What it means is that by looking at things very specifically and very narrowly around, well, this is the thing that I'm going to focus on now, and this is what I'm going to do, and let's get moving with the project, in which case we're not talking about advisory, we're talking about consulting. You can achieve, potentially, if you've got good consultants and good people that come in behind them to build and implement, you could end up with a really good outcome or a point solution. Doesn't necessarily mean that it addresses the needs of the organization and the broader business plan of the organization, particularly for organizations that don't take a broad view of technology changes, not because they're bad people or not wise, but simply because they don't have the hindsight or knowledge of what happens when a particular point solution doesn't interact well with another particular point solution, and you end up with fruit salad. Yeah,
That's a good terminology.
So we look to align and play back everything we propose and offer to clients ultimately to their organizational objectives. We always start off by looking at what is the business case. So the conversations that we have with our clients don't start with the client ringing us and saying, we've got this particular problem. Sometimes they do, but we draw it back and use the wide angle lens in the conversation. We don't start with someone contacting us and saying, I've got this problem and here's how I want to solve it.
Otherwise, they'd probably be solving it themselves.
The wherewithal to implement it themselves. They might be coming to their technology partner to design, build, deliver, and manage. But unless they've been doing these things for many years, the piece they're missing is how does that fit into the overall equation and deliver the outcomes you perceive. So we endeavor to always start with what is the business case? What is it we're trying to achieve here? How do we feel we're going to solve it? What constitutes a good as distinct from a fair or an average or a bad? Yeah. So what are our measurements for success going to look like? How does that fit into everything we're planning over the next 2, 3, 5 years within the organization? If we're looking at implementing a cloud-based solution, does that cloud-based solution interact well with everything we're already doing? If we implement an ERP accounting system or a CRM or a particular point solution that deals with, say, membership management or whatever the case might be, how does that fit with everything we're already doing? Are there good data connections with the other systems, or are we going to have to build it later on? If we're going to have to build it later on, what's going to happen? What is the impact on the business? And equally, how are the people inside the organization going to deal with this change? Often, if change is not managed and anticipated well, one or more stakeholders inside the organization that knowingly or unknowingly will try and sabotage the process.
Yes, I've seen that happen in associations before, unfortunately.
Not just in associations or not-for-profits, in every kind of business. Educating not just the executive team, but the board, dealing with governance and risk at a board level, educating them as to what they should be expecting, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what are the trends, what they should be considering, how to protect themselves as directors. All those conversations are
that should be in their
important.
inductions and in their strategic planning.
Sure.
And yeah,
how do they share board documents? The number of times I've seen board members use private email addresses, that's quite alarming. It's not expensive to set up similar mechanisms in an email account for a board member on a board of an organization.
I found that even if they do have that email address, they don't use it, and they will continue to use their corporate email.
Understanding the implications of one's actions is what drives changes in behavior.
How does Majestic stay ahead of technology changes and innovations, especially as new tools and trends emerge?
Staying ahead comes down to maintaining a constant cadence of education. We can't possibly know everything as well, and we're very mindful of that. So we build subject matter expertise in the same way as you would in any industry, in associations of a variety of different types and shapes and sizes. You've got the concept of CPD. You have that in education, in the education sector itself, as well as in a variety of other professional services. So it's about ongoing, constant learning. We encourage our team to be always learning. We have processes in place to ensure that those things continue to happen. We look for gaps in our knowledge in certain areas that we need to plug, and we then assign different people with a task of going or undergoing particular training in a particular area.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to have deep subject matter expertise. And in areas where we don't, because it is our responsibility to ensure that we drive the direction of technology adoption in an organization, we look to have a high level of understanding of subject matter even in areas where we're not looking to be an expert. We need to understand enough in how to look for partners or other technology providers and identify the ones that are going to be able to come and assist and provide the right outcome.
Yeah. AI automation transforming IT management. Can you share examples of how Majestic is using tools to enhance the client experience?
Lots and everywhere nowadays. It started quite a while ago. We've been using, and it's important to understand the distinction between AI and robotic process automation, because the RPA, or robotic process automation, has been around for pretty much as long as I've been in this industry, for at least 30 years. And it fundamentally is about mimicking the process that humans undertake in their job, documenting and coding it into a series of actions that a computer can then undertake in order to perform a particular task. That's for tasks that we know to anticipate.
That's robotic automation.
Or just automation in general.
Yeah.
The difference between that and AI is AI looks to learn and anticipate what should happen next, and do it without the foresight of programming or coding to have told the system that this is what needs to happen next. That's the distinction.
Preemptive.
So it's discerning, it's discerning from past actions, learning from past actions, and then deducting from that in its own right by following patterns to look at what the future might need to look like or what it might need to bring.
Whereas
So where
robotic
does-
automation will only do exactly what you've told it to
Correct.
do. And what comes to mind is when you're talking to ChatGPT and you put in a typo, it still understands what you're saying because it's analyzing or preemptive.
Correct.
And
It's
whereas
anticipating.
robotic automation would be like, doesn't compute, basically.
Bang. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Spot on. Understanding that distinction is important. In the context of AI, over the last few years, we've been deploying AI solutions to assist in delivering services. As those tools become more sophisticated, we will be able to then see them also discern between a problem that might only be affecting a single individual, but that particular single individual needs to get something done that if they don't get it done in the next 20 minutes has substantial impact on the organization overall.
So it can
Right.
filter high, low, medium, crisis level of things.
Yeah, that's right. Organizations outsource a managed function around technology in a reactive context, as in outsource help desk. But therefore, by definition, because we've got the right economies of scale, we're not going to be dealing with all of the things at with the same level of importance or priority. We use AI increasingly in security. Some tools require human involvement, and a human element always needs to stay in the middle of all of those things. I don't think we're at a point yet where AI can operate autonomously. We're still a way off from that. And even then, I'd like to think that we will always maintain the human in the middle element. And there are some reasons for that, but that's probably beyond the scope of the conversation today. But computers can process more data points every second than humans. By looking for patterns, AI can determine inconsistencies far more efficiently than a human being can.
Yes.
And AI, in the context of a cyber security operations center that looks to monitor for anomalies, those kind of tools help in that context immensely. The tools that we have at our disposal have the potential to make us better or undo us, like any tool.
Exactly. If it's not monitored, if it's not secure, if it's not...
Yeah, correct.
Exactly.
So understanding all of those things is important. Then that carries into what we do within our client environment. It's not just about the tools we use to deliver services. It's about using AI to embed AI capability inside our clients to enable them to do the same things for themselves.
Fantastic. I think it's really exciting, actually. So social impact seems to be a growing part of your strategy. How is Majestic thinking about its social footprint and contributing?
We don't charge not-for-profits in the same way that we charge our for-profit clients.
The lights still need to stay on.
Correct, that's right. And so we need to maintain a balance between the two, and that's really important to understand. So as a consequence of that, it's really important for us to pick and choose the NFPs that we're working with. We need to have good alignment. We generally have conversations internally before we even engage with the team to make sure that we have that good alignment, to make sure that people are genuinely interested in wanting to support that particular cause and that particular element or what have you. Whether it's a DGR classified or approved organization or not, there needs to be some kind of a connection.
It makes sense. Balancing IT and security with practical needs. For many clients, balancing security with usability can be tricky. So how does Majestic approach this, ensuring that clients have practical, user-friendly solutions without compromising on security?
I think it goes without saying, Peter, that no one's got a money pit that keeps flowing.
I'd like to meet someone that does, though.
Sure. Look, there are
Friends
probably
with
a
those
few individuals in this world that couldn't possibly spend as much money as they're making every hour of the day when they're awake or asleep. We're not in that situation, so let's just press on. But I think understanding and looking at the world through that lens is important when advising and recommending to clients how they should go about protecting themselves. Nowadays, people are becoming more savvy in their questioning. But we used to get to ask a question, and still do from time to time, how much do I need to spend to be 100% safe? The answer is really simple.
How long is a
You
piece of
don't-
string?
There is no such amount,
Yeah.
and you're asking the wrong question. Saying that I'm going to invest $1 million when an organization only has $1 million worth of revenue does not make a lot of sense, because the organization will cease to exist
Yeah.
if it spends $1 million in security, right?
Yeah.
So that's not good for anyone.
No.
Yep. But spending an appropriate amount, commensurate with the level of risk associated with the information that particular organization holds, is the key factor here. Yep.
Would you ever advise an association to lower their business operations in terms of their risk is outweighing what they can afford to protect?
Generally speaking, although I have personal experience sitting on different boards, I understand far more broadly my responsibilities as a director than purely from a technology standpoint. I think what's really important to understand is that we often, in our context as Majestic, need to stick to our lane. Yep. The way in which we would couch that conversation is to say, to protect what you're currently storing is going to take an enormous amount of effort and capital. May we suggest reducing the amount of information you store, or the period for which you need to store that information? Are there any laws that require you to store that information indefinitely, or can we put data and governance strategies in place that mean that certain documents or certain files or what have you can be disposed of after a certain amount of time, and we put mechanisms and controls in place that can do that programmatically at a certain point in time? For years we've needed to store financial data, years ago for 7 years, and in more recent times for 5 years, but certainly other types of information needs to be held for different periods of time. Understanding those things and putting controls in place can automatically reduce the amount of data that you hold. The more data you hold, the more surface bad actors have to attack. The easier it is for them and the harder it is for us to protect it.
Yep. Makes sense. Definitely. How does Majestic assist its clients in setting up resilient IT infrastructure that can withstand disruptions and support growth?
It is about a combination of tools and education, and it's also about understanding risk appetite. Putting all of those three things together helps us create a strategy that to an extent mitigates the potential, but then also with a very clear understanding of how are we going to deal with a problem should and when it occurs. So for instance, an organization gets their IT assets are infiltrated, and somebody is sitting inside the network and they're waiting to be able to deposit a payload to get to the mother load. What's important to understand is what happens when that happens. All of an organization's data is now locked, and someone's demanding cryptocurrency to unlock it. So we're in a position where we need to pay a ransom. Now, there's a whole lot of other considerations when we look at paying a ransom, and increasingly ransoms nowadays are being paid more often because of an organization's desire to minimize reputational damage.
Have you ever had to pay a ransom? Has it ever come up in anyone that you've worked for or with?
Over the years, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And perhaps not in the context of Majestic, but remember, I've been around a long time.
Yeah.
But yes,
we won't carbon date you on that one.
But it's definitely it's definitely happened.
Yeah.
And I've seen and been a third-party observer to lots of others as well. So those things happen for real. When they happen, what's important is clear protocols and rulings from board down as to what do we do when that thing happens. In the same way as we've got a plan for fire in the building, same thing plays out here. It's important to make sure that all those plans are already in place ahead of something happens. So when something happens, we know how we're going to act and react.
Ensuring that you
Yeah.
have a risk plan and a plan of action
Correct.
according to it.
And then, what have we done, not necessarily to eliminate, but to mitigate the risk to the organization? Now we can't operate because we've lost everything.
I saw an association go down for weeks because of that. It just crippled them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do we have a backup strategy and solution in place? The amount of time that it takes for that backup strategy to be actioned and for us to return to normal operating conditions. When was the last time we've tested it? Not enough just to
like
assume.
you said, yeah.
Not enough just to assume that we've got backup and everything is okay. It needs to be checked all the time. When have we tested it? Do we have an insurance policy in place? We've all got insurance policies to protect assets. It astounds me that organizations don't have cyber insurance.
And it's just not something that's thought of in many
Yeah.
not-for-profits.
No, because there are varying levels of bad guys. There are bad people looking for the lower hanging fruit, and they know the associations or not-for-profit organizations invest less in protecting themselves.
They don't have the infrastructure.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right. It's an easier target.
And it's something that people and organisations really should be focusing on. A lot of people mistakenly, no bad ill to the law. The law can't help you there. It can't find these people. It can't retract your money for you. It can't.
Often it can't.
Often, on a probability scale, you're not likely to get it back. It's really your protection and your precautionary measures. And if that fails, nothing's impenetrable. Have a good insurance policy in place. So it helps with assessment and repair instead of just recovery
Correct.
costs.
That's right.
Yeah. Not something you would connect with unless you were thinking about it. It's some food for thought.
We do stray a little because our senior people advising clients know to have this kind of conversation.
It's an important conversation because it's
Absolutely.
the dots that you wouldn't think to connect that you can come in and shine a light on for people.
Continuity between the delivery of the advice and the ultimate execution. We act on both the advisory side and the execution side. We're able to tell our clients that we will, in our relationship with them, initially aim to be cost neutral, but ideally revenue accretive. So we work with our clients around the boardroom table and in the executive leadership, not just in waiting for them to tell us what it is that they're looking to achieve, but we listen to issues that they have in their business. And it might be nothing to do with IT. We listen to that conversation with a technology lens and come up with solutions that help facilitate it in areas where they can't do it today and they couldn't imagine to do it today because they don't have the human capital.
But they're aware of it and they can plan for the future.
Even more than that, we bring to bear technology that helps augment human capacity to be able to take them to places that with just the human capacity they're never going to get to because they can't afford to pay enough salaries to make it happen.
Yes.
Yeah,
And so that's that AI and robotic automation working
Correct.
together.
that's right.
Yeah. Fantastic. It's an exciting time. It really is. What advice would you give to organizations that are just beginning to think about cybersecurity as a priority?
Okay, I think eating for humans is a priority. You can probably not eat for a few weeks and still remain alive, but drinking is certainly an even bigger priority. I wouldn't put cybersecurity on the same level, but in a business operational context, I would say it's certainly the same.
Yeah.
I think that any organization on the face of this planet who are not utilizing technology, the moment you use technology, your reliance on that technology increases, and it increases over time before you even realize it. Not protecting that asset is just like not having life insurance, not having car insurance,
Not wearing a seatbelt.
not wearing a seatbelt. Correct, right?
Yeah.
I think implementing a level of security, measure it with your size, the economic circumstances, the industry, the sector in which you operate, the types of data you hold. All those things play a part in making a decision on what the investment could look like. But I don't know of any organization that shouldn't have some cybersecurity mechanisms in place and controls to protect themselves and documented evidence on what it is they're doing and why they've made the decisions they've made so that risk is properly weighed.
Yeah, definitely. What advice would you give to young professionals who aspire to become leaders in the tech and IT sectors?
Awesome. Go out there and do it. But be mindful of what it is that you don't know. Seek advice. Don't try and do things on your own. There are plenty of us grey-haired, or in my case, almost no-haired people who have been around and doing this for a long time. Most of us, I won't say all, but certainly many of us love to share, because we get to a certain point in our own career where it's not necessarily so much about building or making our own, or building our own business or making profit. That's not enough in and of itself. We get to a point where we want to feel like we're leaving a greater legacy than ourselves. And a wise mentor taught me a long time ago, and I use that myself today when people ask me about what do I want to leave as my legacy, what would I consider to be success in my own life, what do I want to be written on my tombstone, so to speak. And my response to that is, I'd like to, by the time that I retire, as in fully retire, and don't have anything to do with business or the sector at all, I'd like to have helped at least 10 other people achieve commercial success in their own business. Yeah. So engage with people that are going to help you filling the gaps that you might not have. I think that the energy that young people have is probably far greater than what I have today. It will help them get places faster. They have better tools nowadays than I did when I started in this industry. So there's a high likelihood that they're going to be able to accelerate at a faster pace than what we did 3 decades or 2 decades ago.
Yeah. So utilize those networks, but in particular those mentorships.
Yeah.
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 Fabulous. I know that you're passionate about supporting more women in IT and cybersecurity. So what inspired that commitment, and how do you see the industry evolving in the regard of more women in the industry?
I think this is not just about IT, it's about STEM in general. Within the technology sector, specifically around IT, there's a great distinction between engagement of female technology professionals or women in roles like programming, for example, or systems analysis. Far less so in roles that revolve around infrastructure, whether physical or virtual in the cloud. That seems to not attract nearly as many women. And herein lies the problem. When you've got disparity in whichever way, male or female, when there's too big a sway, there's a greater opportunity for bias.
Yeah.
What I've learned a long time ago is that humanity, we've somehow managed to balance things reasonably well. We've got roughly half male and half female population. For men, the other half are women. Doesn't it stand to reason then that the people that we use inside our own organizations, inside our own businesses, will reflect the audience we're addressing? Are we building in a bias that's not affording us the best possible outcome? I'm not saying that it's not going to be a great outcome, but the best possible outcome if we have a good blend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And more egalitarian approach to the industry and all industries, if there's no saturation and going on either side.
Now, the other piece to it, and I don't know what's more important, but when I'm cooking, I go into the kitchen, I shut the blinds, dim the lights, make sure there are no distractions. I close any door available to remove people or distractions. Don't talk to me, I'm boiling an egg. My wife can cook a 3-course meal, help our 14-year-old daughter do her homework, talk to someone on the phone, and conduct heart surgery all at the same time. Yeah.
A formidable woman.
Men and women are made differently. We all operate on a spectrum, but women bring a different quality to a business and outcome than men. Generally speaking, men might be able to do certain jobs that require brute force better than some or most women. Yeah. But for the most part, and particularly in the industry in which we operate, which is knowledge working, that's not the case. We might, if lifting a server into a rack in a data center, that might be important, but that doesn't happen often. We need to use our noggins. And women bring a different perspective.
Definitely.
Even when it comes to design and outcomes for our clients, it's important to get different perspectives to make sure we're addressing the addressable market or audience.
Just like you wouldn't saturate a board with one gender, why
Correct.
would you saturate an industry?
Diversity is important. We genuinely believe it. Diversity is not just about gender, it's about where people sit on the spectrum in other contexts as well. There are people inside our business who are not necessarily as good at some things because of their predisposition, but are incredibly talented and very focused and are able to produce amazing results because of what historically used to be perceived as a limitation. We see it as an incredible opportunity to leverage the fact that those particular individuals who have a certain, I won't call it a deficiency, but who operate at a different level to what the standard deviation would normally operate at, but they're much better at doing certain things than other people as a consequence of that.
Yeah.
So
I
why
agree.
not take advantage of that? So, but particularly with respect to women, look, one of the organisations that we support that's very dear to us is Girl Guides. And we believe Girl Guides is a wonderful pathway for introducing girls to STEM. The activities that they undertake are more likely to be undertaken by girls who could potentially see themselves in STEM roles later in life. Yeah. So we believe we're very passionate about their cause and therefore we support their endeavours. That's just as a by the by.
It's absolutely fantastic. It's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show today, Tal. It's been so insightful and so interesting, which has been a really enjoyable experience. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful.